Hi, I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. I'm joined today with our Congressman, Blake Moore. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ember.
Well, Happy New Year, and I'm thrilled to see that you're continuing what you started with around having that balanced politics. It's been continuing to be divisive in D.C., especially with President Biden's infrastructure bill. Tell me what your take is on the infrastructure bill and maybe some wins that did come out of it.
I love that you give me a chance to talk about it, actually, because so many people will look at a one vote, a yes or no vote, and make their assumption on that's the way you feel about things. Infrastructure is something that our country needs to invest. There's a difference between a lot of the budgetary items that we have. There's a lot of things that we can invest in that even if it's more spending can be a benefit, right? And I look at a lot of things on my armed services role as that. I care deeply about our debt and deficit, and so that is always a driving force for making my decisions. But one thing that I would say in direct response to your question is actually how much work, even as I'm not on the infrastructure committee, how much work that our team does on infrastructure projects in Utah and in the first district, bus transit systems in Cache County, rapid transit, part of Park City, Summit County. I worked closely with Summit County commissioners, lots of things on 25th Street in Ogden. So there are numerous infrastructure things we get to do, regardless of if there's an infrastructure bill that needs to be reauthorized or to what nature. The infrastructure bill itself, the thing that is really, and I get it, I wouldn't be necessarily following it that closely either, but they were fundamentally different in the House and in the Senate. Even though it was the exact same bill, the senators, they had a coalition of bipartisanship that was from both parties. The need in the Senate to make sure that the filibuster stays intact. So they need to be able to show and work together that they can do things like come together on an infrastructure bill. When that came over to the House, it was several months that Speaker Pelosi held on to that. She could cajole her other members that didn't want to vote for Build Back Better. She could get them to support it. She held the infrastructure bill hostage in order to get enough of her own members to also say, look, we're going to get enough people to vote for the infrastructure bill. And with that, we expect you to vote for Build Back Better. That's the reality. That was what was going on. And all of a sudden, we as Republicans were looking at it like, if there could be 4 Democrats that would vote, kind of like Manchin said he was going to do,
right,
in backing off of more and more of that program spending that was taking place, that I know a lot of Democrats didn't want to necessarily support, but they felt a lot of pressure to. If we just needed 4, and there was so many Republicans, because I had worked with No Labels, I had worked with many different bipartisan groups to try to get it so, we could focus in on an infrastructure bill and help it to be something that could avoid a lot of other government spending that we've seen this year, because it's just cost inflation. It's not the right direction to go. A lot of these government programs end up going bankrupt or go down that road. It adds to our deficit and debt issue. Anyway, so I was always supportive and willing to engage on it. Some members of my party were just like a flat no, but I decided I'm going to try to engage on this. And ultimately, the vote for the infrastructure, it was always tied to the vote for Build Back Better, and I couldn't be a part of that either. The members that did vote for it on the Republican side, they have districts that desperately need it, and they're from New York and New Jersey and a few other states that are heavy infrastructure needs. There are good projects that will come from them and go to Utah, but to me, the benefits didn't outweigh the cost on the House side. Senators, I always commended them for doing work that was bipartisan, and that's kind of the way it played out. Some of the more progressive members decided not to vote for infrastructure because they wanted more. They wanted more and more trillions on the Build Back Better, and they were mad that they weren't going to get that. So that's ultimately the politics that got involved. But we still have a lot of good infrastructure projects that we've been working on just in the first district alone.
Well, and you talk about what you're already doing in the first district, and Utah has been known to always be rather progressive when it comes to roads and transit, and especially now you're starting to see a lot more, of course, within the Salt Lake Valley, with, the air quality, and you talk about infrastructure. So I think that that's something that's always been on the mind of Utahns in particular, and especially in the Ogden area where it, historically has been one of the railroads, right? It was one of the first big railroad stations. So thank you for.
And, the additional thing to that is congestion. You talked about air quality, but also affordable housing. If we can layer more intermodal transportation opportunities on that, and those are all things that are getting worked on and being done. And you need to continue to focus on that. So, and then now that the infrastructure bill is passed and Build Back Better is not, with what Manchin has done, again, I was hopeful there was more Democrats in the House that were willing to back off, and then we would have poured on and probably been very supportive of the infrastructure bill. I think there's still some good stuff that can come out. A lot of our water infrastructure will be done well through this.
That's great. And I really do appreciate some of that backstory of what was actually happening. So thank you for that insight. And as you just talked about that, we talk about you've always been open with your support for armed services and that role within armed services. And while Summit County in particular doesn't have a huge role, your district representing Summit County and of course Hill Air Force Base has been one. And there's been several press releases around the work that you've done. What is your hope for this next year coming up with your role on the committee?
Well, after the first year, we had a very, very strong year. As a freshman in the minority, we still were able to get so many of our priorities through. I even mentioned it in a campaign piece that I said, look, these aren't just job Utahns. These are crucial to our national security, our national defense. Hill Air Force Base has been recognized among key stakeholders within the DoD that they do an exceptional job. If you give us landing gear to do, we will over deliver on things with respect to landing gear as part of our industrial base. We've been awarded the GBSD program, first operational wing of the F-35. These are huge. And this community has always been recognized as a community that will come together, build a strong workforce. And we're seeing that as software needs continue to grow. As I've talked to Hill Air Force Base officials, they're saying, like, we could hire every single computer science major that graduates this year and still not have enough of our workforce filled. And so it's the work that we're doing. We had a really good successful year. Going forward, what I want to do is to gain some leadership opportunities on subcommittees. I would love to be a part of designing and being forward thinking about the cyber needs that we're going to need in the Department of Defense. And, so we're ready for, future adversarial situations that are already happening. And that's the key to what we need to do in the armed services, is determine what types of programs and systems that we need to divest from and where we need to invest. And that's how we need to be making smart decisions with taxpayer dollars. And I want to be sort of a thoughtful leader on that as we move forward.
Well, as of course, Congressman Moore, I could sit here and talk to you for hours and pick your brain about different topics, but I want to talk a little bit as we finalize the interview. You actually mentioned this just a few moments ago around affordable housing, around the workforce. And the last time we spoke, we talked specifically around immigration and our J-1 visas. And as we see reports come out almost daily around the needs of employers, has there been any movement? And I know that the Omicron virus has definitely put, has tampened it down, but is there any movement on opening up immigration to where we can get more of our seasonal workers?
So we're focused on it heavily. We interact. I recently spoke with the manager up at Snow Basin. There's been an increase in the amount allowed this year, still not back to the levels that we were at. So we need to get out ahead of that for next year. COVID continues to be the issue with this. We'll put a travel ban with South Africa, and I think I even read this morning that the severity of it is definitely, the data is showing that the severity of it is lower, and that's positive when you celebrate that. And the focus needs to be on getting those numbers back to pre-COVID numbers, and probably even bump it up a little bit more. I've met with a lot of the stakeholders in Utah about this. Our office is fully aware. we can, if anybody that's listening is interested or cares, do not hesitate to reach out to our office to find more specific information. But the numbers have gone up, and we need to continue to embrace that. It's such a good program. It's good culturally. It's good with respect to, again, getting the workforce here. But then they go back home and they talk to their friends and family about how amazing Park City and some of our Wasatch back areas are. And then, we'll get more visitation that way. So it's a net positive all around, and we'll keep pushing for it.
Awesome. Congressman Moore, it's always such a pleasure to speak with you. And as you start your second year, I know that when you started last year, you hit the ground running, with no pun intended, because it was the day of the Capitol riot. We want to wish you the very best of luck this year, and we're excited to stay in touch with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been quite a year. It feels like 10, but we'll be ready to start our second.
I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Park City TV, over the air on Channel 36 and our Comcast channels 17 and 102.